So sometimes when we have doctrinal feasts like the Feast of the Ascension, we fail to connect it to what does this have to do with me? So I want to connect it in three ways. One is a message in a bottle. The second one is a window. And the last one is water and wine. So first, a message in a bottle. When you got up this morning and you made the decision to come to Mass today, what were you hoping to find? What were you hoping to encounter? You don't have to raise your hands, but just think about, what did you hope to get out of coming to Mass today? Maybe you wanted to come see some of your friends or some of your fellow parishioners. Maybe you were coming because music is so fabulously incredible. Or maybe you were coming because you knew you were going to get a fantastic homily. Sorry. Or maybe you were coming because you wanted some clarity. You were hoping maybe to hear from God a little bit more about how you fit into the plan of salvation. Or maybe you were coming because you were just simply looking. Maybe you just didn't feel quite right, and you were hoping that connecting here might help you feel a little bit better. That's what takes us to a message in the bottle. Now, for those of you who are familiar with the 1980s, it was the age of the greatest music ever. The Police had a song called Message in a Bottle, and it's about a castaway on an island by himself. And he starts to recognize how desperately lonely he is, and so he decides to send a message in a bottle out to the world, hoping that someone will get his message and respond. So he does. He writes a message, puts it in the bottle, drops it in the ocean, it goes out. And he waits, and he waits, and he waits, and then all of a sudden, 100 million bottles wash up on the shore with other castaways who also are desperately lonely. And he recognizes that it seems I'm not alone in being alone. You know, in the United States today, 20% of adult Americans report being lonely daily. Not just once in a while, but daily. That means there are 52 million people who are lonely right now. That's significant. Why so much loneliness? Why so much desperation? Why so much unhappiness? Maybe we need to look to something more. Maybe what we've been trying isn't quite working. Maybe we need a window. And that's what the Eucharist gives us. You know, every time we come to Mass, the Eucharist gives us a window into eternity. It gives us a window into the mystery that defines our lives, the life, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And when we call something a mystery, it's not unknowable. It's just so profound that we can come back to it again and again and again and always get something more. And so when we come back to this celebration of the Eucharist week after week, what we're really doing is trying to see how the story of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ intersects with the story of our lives and how we start to see ourselves in that Paschal mystery. And so this window of the Eucharist gives us an opportunity to look also into eternity, to recognize that our ultimate happiness doesn't come from this world alone. And when we seek our ultimate happiness here and now, we find ourselves desperately alone, desperately unhappy. And so to encounter the hope of the gospel, we have to look through that window into eternity and recognize that we are made for more. And that's what leads us to water and wine. You know, in the Mass, we do all these cool different signs and gestures, and we don't always explain them. You know, when we are about to read the gospel, we make the sign of the cross on our forehead, our lips, and our heart. And it's really a prayer. We're praying that God will be in our mind, on our lips, and in our hearts. And there's another gesture that's often done silently when the priest or the deacon is preparing the chalice at the altar. He mixes water and wine together. And we'll probably notice that, and we're thinking, well, maybe he's just watering down the wine. Maybe it's too strong. Or what's the reason for that? Well, it's accompanied by a prayer. And the prayer is, by the mystery of this water and wine, may we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. That's a pretty cool prayer. May we come to share in the divinity of Christ, who humbled himself to share in our humanity. That's what hope is built on. Hope is not built on us fixing ourselves. Hope is not built on tomorrow's going to be better than today. Hope is built on the fact that God entered into our reality specifically so that he could draw us to himself. And so the celebration of the Ascension is not that Jesus walked on the earth and then said, okay, I've had enough of you, I'll see you later. That's not the Ascension. The Ascension is the loading of a spring. It's the preparation for the gift of the Holy Spirit. It's the beginning of the church. And the church is that continuing action of Christ in the world through its sacraments and through its members. And so the Feast of the Ascension really is a preparation for us to recognize how we are not only not alone, but to hear the words of Jesus as he ascended. Behold, I will be with you always, even until the end of the age. And so rather than getting a message in a bottle from other abandoned people, what we get is a message from our God who says, I will never leave you alone.